And now, the worldwide phenomenon. One records in Stowmarket, the other records in Houston. Alex Moss, Burton DeWitt join forces to bring you the weekly Dartscast 180.
Hello and welcome to the weekly Dartscast sponsored by Dartwolf. I'm Alex Moss and joining me as always my co-host, Darts statistician, the Darts driver king, Burton DeWitt. When we're recording this, I should say good morning, Burton. How are you doing?
Yeah, it's just after 6 a.m. here. I think this is the earliest we've ever recorded, but sometimes that's what how our schedules align. I'm doing fine, if still a little bit sleepy. How are you, Alex?
I'm doing well, thank you. Yeah, I definitely couldn't record at 6 o'clock in the morning, so credit to you for that. And yeah, I've got the rest of the week off. It's an exciting day on this Tuesday. Later on, my team Stowmarket are going to be playing in the playoff semi-finals, so good to take my mind off that for a little while. And let's kick off the show with the Premier League. A look back at last week. Johnny Clayton going top of the Premier League, winning his third title of the season, beating Michael Van Gerwen 6-5 in the final in Aberdeen to replace MVG at the top of the table. And that brings us on to our question of the week. Who do you think is going to finish top of the Premier League?
Ooh, it's as tight of a race as I can remember now with 5 nights to go. And I don't want to say it's a two-way race because all it's going to take is Clayton and Van Gerwen losing in the quarterfinals one night and either Wright or Wade winning the night, and suddenly it becomes a three-way race. But you expect that both Clayton and Van Gerwen will win at least one more night themselves, the way they've been playing to date. They've each won 3. The rest of the field combined has won 5 up to now. And beyond that, they're just playing at the highest standard and most consistent standard, especially Clayton. Van Gerwen's been a little inconsistent, but not to the same level that he's been inconsistent over the last couple of years. But they've been playing, by and large, the best darts and the most consistent darts of anyone in the field. And there's no reason for us to think that's going to slow down anytime soon. I mean, Van Gerwen, beyond his 3 titles, has been to the final 5 of the last 8 nights. Clayton has been to the semifinals at least 5 nights in a row. Nobody else has done that so far this Premier League campaign. So even if they're not winning titles, they're still getting points. And for Wright and Wade, that leaves a lot of work to do. Wright's been really hit and miss since becoming world number 1 almost 2 months ago. And Wade's been, well, since Mac's been on and said that, look out for Wade, Wade has lifted his game. But it's a lot of ground still to make up. I think it's either going to be Clayton or Van Gerwen. As between the two, I guess I have to tip someone. That's the point of this question. But I just don't know. I'm going to go Van Gerwen to top the table. I think his experience and particularly his performances when he plays anyone other than Johnny Clayton are going to get him over the line. I think he's going to win maybe 2 more nights and Clayton's just going to win the 1, and he'll nip Clayton by a point or 2. So I'll go for the big green machine to top the table. But it looks like it should be a 2-way race from here. And as I say often on the show, I'm prepared and ready to be wrong.
I think it is a 2-horse race, and looking at how our poll's going at the moment on Twitter, it is open for the rest of the week, so do get involved in that. But at the moment, 57% going with Johnny Clayton on that, 56.5%, 39.7% going with Michael Van Gerwen, and yeah, pretty much everyone thinking it's a 2-horse race. We've got 3.8% going with other, and we'll read out a couple of messages from our listeners who've replied to the poll as well. Eve Marie Coquette saying, I can't imagine someone else other than MVG or Clayton on the top of the league after Newcastle's night. They've been so dominant since it has started, but we never know. Deborah Flowers saying the Welsh has got this the fairest year to shine again. And we look at the table now with 5 nights to go of the regular season, and there are gaps opening up, but the race for the top spot, that is one of the most interesting elements of this Premier League now. Johnny Clayton on 26 points, Michael Van Gerwen 25 points, 1 point between them. They've both won 3 nights of this season so far. They're the only 2 players that have won more than 1 night this season, so that kind of tells you these 2 have been, more often than not, the 2 best players so far. And yeah, it's pretty tight so far. You look back to last week and how well Johnny Clayton played, the 6-5 win against Peter Wright. He pulled out that 180 in the decider when the leg was pretty close. And then the final against Michael Van Gerwen, MVG goes 5-4 up, kicks off the leg with a 180, a 140, leaves 181 after 6 darts, misses the ball for a 12 darter. Johnny Clayton 84 in 2 darts, just the 11 darter to break to get a throw for the decider, holes in 15. And that's what we were seeing a lot of from Johnny Clayton last year. And what year it was, 2021. He won the weekly Dartscast Player of the Year, among other titles as well. But he had such a good year. And to come into this year, how was he going to top that this year? Well, if he could finish top of the Premier League, that's something that he didn't do last year. That would certainly be an accolade to add to his collection. And it does feel like he is getting back into some good form at the moment. And, you know, to win those tight games, to produce the goods when he needs it, when he puts the finish in, the scoring together, he does prove why he is one of the best players in the world. He's in the top 8, top 9 in the world at the moment. But you'd say, based on form, based on what he's done recently, he is one of the top 3 or 4 players in the world. So he's put himself top. I think it is going to be a tight run in it, as we know with this Premier League, with the points that are on offer. I think it could come all the way down to that final night. They've got a pretty similar running for the next 4 nights. I think they're going to be playing the same opponent 3 of the 4 nights over those next 4 nights. And then other than that, you've got Johnny Clayton playing Gerwyn Price, Michael van Gerwen playing Joe Cullen. So it's a pretty close as far as who they're going to be playing for the next few nights. But I think it will come down to semi-finals to finals. If they play each other in a final again, the head-to-head is 2-2 at the moment. Johnny's had his number the last 2 nights, 2 6-5 wins. I think it goes all the way down to that final night. And hopefully we'll see those 2 in the final on that final night, and that will determine the top spot. We'll have something exciting to finish off the regular season. But if I'm going to go with someone, you went with MVG, I'll go the other way. I'll go Johnny Clayton to finish top.
Well, I hope you're right that it comes down to a match between the 2 on the final night, and then we'll see which among us is correct. Now, a lot of talk about the Aberdeen crowd last week being out of order. Obviously, you saw Michael van Gerwen go up and talk to the match referee after the final. But can anything be done to get the best of order from a crowd of that size?
Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? And disappointed to see these things happen, but you've got to say, not really surprising, is it, these days? And we've spoken about it on the show in the past. We spoke about it after the last World Championship at Ali Pali, that partisan crowd and the nature of the beast, I guess, with the PDC, what they've created. And as much as we love seeing these games played in front of these large venues with thousands watching, we know that all it takes is 1 or 2 in the crowd to start whistling, and it can put the players off. You speak to the players, they'll tell you that constant noise, it doesn't really put them off. You know, they get used to it. But when you've got 1 or 2 people whistling, that's when it can seep through, and it can be off-putting. And we saw it after, didn't we? Johnny Clayton spoke about it in his press conference after. He said he was happy to win the night, but he was upset with the crowd, and it kind of tarnished what he did that night. And Michael went up to Russ Bray, the referee, after the game and said how upset he was with the crowd. And we saw Russ, I think, say thank you to the crowd at one point in that final, but I don't think that's really enough, is it? And we joke on Twitter, hashtag booing the car park campaign, the infamous video at Lakeside, Rab Butler pausing play at Lakeside to tell the crowd, if you want to boo, go in the car park. I don't think we'll ever see Russ or any of the PDC referees do that. But in fairness, we did see George Noble not so long back on the Euro Tour address the crowd. I think it was Joe Cullen against Daryl Gurney. It might have been another game, but he told the crowd to behave or he'd take the players off stage. So I guess you've got to get to that point where you threaten to take the players off for the crowd to behave. Will we ever get to that point? I don't know. I don't think we've seen that happen too many times, especially in a Premier League night or an event of that magnitude. But maybe this is something that it needs to get to a certain point for the PDC to address it. When the players are complaining about it, you need to keep the players happy. So if we're seeing this happen regularly and the players complain about it and this is what people are talking about, then you'd imagine the PDC will probably take more of a proactive approach. But at this moment in time, I think they're just going to let it ride. But if it continues to happen and the players keep complaining about it, then, you know, something's got to be done about it. But what can you do with a crowd of thousands of people? It's a tricky one, but disappointing that the darts didn't do the talking in the end, because there was some good games of darts and we don't really want to be talking about the crowd.
Yeah, and usually when we've been talking about the crowd, because we've had a similar question to this before, it's been in relation to like what we saw in the quarterfinals and semifinals with the partisan atmosphere, where Johnny Clayton was getting booed against Gary Anderson, and then Johnny Clayton was getting booed against Peter Wright as he knocks out the 2 Scottish players. Although it seemed like the crowd did not forgive him for that, because they continued to boo him in the final against Michael van Gerwen. But what we haven't talked as much about, but does occur, is the whistling and the other stuff that is not directed at one player, but is just intended to put both players off. And that's what needs to be cracked down upon. I mean, yes, I think the booing is obnoxious when it's based on partisan reasons, but I don't care as much in the Premier League. It's an exhibition. This event is advertised, especially nights like this, as the local players coming home. Never mind that Gary Anderson and Peter Wright, instead of living in the north of Scotland, live in the south of England. We'll ignore that fact. It's advertised as these players coming home. It's why when we had the challengers in, this was the particular night that John Henderson played in twice, and he was given the hero's welcome, even though as well he is from a little bit outside Aberdeen in Huntly. I don't care as much about that in the Premier League because it's an exhibition and it is designed to bring the players, and particularly for a lot of these players, the hometown players, or at least as close to hometown as possible, to the fans. But what George Noble did during the Euro Tour, I think, is more in line with what needs to start happening, because it's been getting worse and worse. Although, since that happened, the last Euro Tour actually went pretty smoothly. So I think it will have a deterrent effect once quote-unquote fans start getting thrown out or given their last warning before being thrown out. Because, yes, some people will be so drunk that they don't even know that people have been thrown out. But for the most part, when you're hearing that they're throwing people out of the crowd for their behavior and for putting off the players and for intentionally putting off the players, then there will be some sort of change. Maybe not immediate, but pretty darn quickly once that word starts to spread. But I don't think much needs to be changed for Premier League and other exhibitions, because it is just that. This is an exhibition. And it's good for the players to be able to learn how to handle it for when they encounter it elsewhere. But in the Euro Tour and in other ranked events, this is the players' livelihood. This is how they determine whether they even stay on tour for maybe not Clayton or Van Gogh right now, but for many of the players who will be competing in any given Euro Tour, or make sure they get to the World Championships. That's where something needs to be done, especially when you have targeted abuse towards one player or by just one or two people in the crowd. I think we're moving towards that. I think George Noble used those stronger words than we've heard before, probably because the PDC have decided they want to begin to crack down to some extent. That's just speculation on my part, but I think it's a good speculation because we hadn't heard him say anything to that extent of threatening to take the players off before. But I don't think anything needs to be done in the Premier League. It is an exhibition, and if they want to boo based on country, I normally am against that, but in the Premier League, I just don't care.
Hashtag boo in the car park. Let's get that trending. Let's get to our first guest on this week's show, and we're going to switch gears to the WDF. We're going to be chatting to the Chief Development Officer of the WDF. Here's our chat with Richard Ashdown. I'm pleased to say I'm joined by, from his Twitter profile, the professional darts MC, referee, spotter and statistician, also the Chief Development Officer of the WDF, Richard Ashdown. Thanks for the time, Richard. How are you doing?
I'm good, Alex. How are you?
Doing well, thanks. And we're talking a little over a fortnight since the first WDF World Championship came to an end at Lakeside. You've had a bit of time to reflect. How do you look back on those 9 days being back at the home of World Darts?
Yeah, I think overall a great success. It was certainly worth the wait, wasn't it? Such a long time to get back there, and I think the tournament ran brilliantly and looked good, and the players and everyone watching were really pleased with it.
We last had you on the show in October of last year. All roads were leading to Lakeside. The cut-off for spots, the draw was made, but around 2 weeks before the event is postponed. How tough was that decision to make so close to the event?
Oh yeah, it was so difficult. I mean, the work that had got into it for the players around the world was such a key part of the decision, because we had 3 or 4 nations, long haul, that just couldn't get out of their own country. It wasn't just the COVID-19 situation in the UK, it was the global position. And we think, on balance, we made the right decision, because every player that was struggling to get there for January did make it for April.
Yeah, we then see the Lakeside rescheduled for early April, as you mentioned, but before then, 7 players in the men's field. They win their tour cards at Q School, but we see the agreement between the WDF and the PDC gives the opportunity for those 7 to still play at Lakeside if they wanted to. How pleased were you to get that agreement in place? It's a sign that there is a much better working relationship between the pro and the semi-pro amateur bodies now.
Yeah, we were delighted with it, and I'm delighted for the players that were able to take the opportunity as well, because they had earned the right to be there. They did deserve it, and the PDC put it as a one-off exemption, and we're very grateful to them that happened. And yeah, the working relationship has always been fine, actually, since I've been involved with the WDF. if anybody has any sort of political agenda, there certainly isn't one between the PDC and the WDF. I've not found any problems since I've been involved. So, yeah, it was very good that we could cooperate in that instance.
Good to hear. Well, there was still some more changes to the lineup. We saw Fallon and Sherrock come back in, but then withdraw a few days later. Were you surprised to see Fallon pull out for a second time?
Yeah, it was a shock to us. It came, like you said, just a matter of days after accepting the re-invitation. So, yeah, very disappointing, but Fallon has her own reasons. We don't know what they are, and we respect them. If she says she can't play, she can't play.
Well, let's get on to Lakeside, and I was fortunate to be there for the opening weekend. A lot of games, a lot of darts, but it was great to see the event finally happen for you also being the MC. What was it like getting up on stage for that first walk-on and announcing we are back at Lakeside?
It did feel good. The thing is, for me personally, it felt good because it was sort of the part of the job that I'd given the least consideration to. There had been so much involvement in the planning and the running of the event from my side that emceeing the event almost became an afterthought. And I don't mean that in a way that I didn't care about it, because everything I do, I make sure I do properly. But yeah, it wasn't on my mind that morning. What was on my mind that morning was making sure everything was right in a production sense, in the venue and for the players. So yeah, it really felt good, especially introducing Martin Adams to the stage in the first match. That was a really nice starter against Jared Cole, and yeah, it sort of set the tone for the whole week.
Something else I wanted to clear up as well was on that first Sunday, social media, a lot of reports about Mikuru Suzuki's World Championship trophy being taken away by Des Jacklin. A lot of rumours doing the rounds, police being called to Lakeside. We wanted to get the truth to our listeners on what actually happened that day.
Yeah, I was made aware of the police may have been called by Des Jacklin, but no police actually came to the venue. I believe that the situation was sorted out amicably, I can't even say it, between Makuru's management and Des, with the WDF involved, but I wasn't personally. And then to see the reports go online a few hours later of the police had been at the venue, which just wasn't the case. So, yeah, it all seemed to be news after the fact. The trophy had already been handed over. Yeah, it was a bit of a storm in a teacup, to be honest.
Well, as far as the darts, there was plenty of stories to come out of the week. We had Richard Veenstra breaking the Lakeside record average, the ladies' highest checkout going, Beau Greaves, the youngest winner, Thibaut Tricol, the first French finalist, Neil Duff, the first world champion from Northern Ireland. What moments have stuck with you from the week?
Well, you've just listed them all. Yeah, I think a key thing that had been a concern was the amount of people in the audience. So we were concerned about it. We're keen to put over the atmosphere. Something that became clear very early on, that despite the venue not being at capacity, the atmosphere both in the venue and on the television came over really well. And the key people involved in that, of course, that we wanted to benefit are the players. So it was all about the player experience for us. There were a lot of debutants, around half the field were playing there for the first time. So that's the first thing that sticks in my mind about giving these players the opportunity to play at Lakeside, the proverbial home of world darts, have that feeling, and I think that was fulfilled. So from that, if the players are feeling good, in the right place, the organisation was superb, the good darts will follow. And there were so many great games throughout the week that people enjoyed, some of them you've mentioned. The Richard Veenstra performance was obviously very, very good to watch. The return of Wayne Warren as a champion onto the Lakeside stage was a really nice moment, albeit 24 hours later than it should have been due to the generator failure. But yeah, moments like that stick in my mind. I particularly did enjoy that Wayne Warren entrance and the match that followed against Lee Shewan, who also played brilliantly. Yeah, lots of good matches. I think the darts was the talking point, which is what you want, of course, at any event. It was about the darts.
Definitely, and you touched on there the ticket sales, the empty seats for a lot of the week. I know you said on social media about the prices is something you weren't particularly happy with. How does the WDF go about addressing that for the next World Championship?
Well, if it's to be at Lakeside, it won't continue the way that it has, because it can't. But this is quite early in that discussion, to be honest, because, yeah, we still need to... If we're going to... I don't think it's a secret from my point of view that I would like this event to be at Lakeside. So for it to be at Lakeside, we have to make sure that everything is right for it to be there. And ticket prices are one of the things that we have to make sure are right going forward.
The event as well, it had wall-to-wall coverage on Eurosport, a lot of sessions on free-to-air on Quest as well, and there was a lot of good feedback I was seeing about the coverage. What's the feedback that you've had from Eurosport viewing figures, how it went overall?
Yeah, they're absolutely delighted. We've had nothing but good feedback on that front. Yeah, with both, as you say, how it looked and also how well it was viewed. I think that was a success in every department. We were delighted with the production and delighted with the viewing figures.
I'm sure a lot of people that were watching will want to know, we've got the return of the World Masters lined up for December. Is there any plans to have more WDF events televised on Eurosport this year?
Yeah, that's being discussed at the moment. Nothing finalised, and as soon as it is, we'll get it out there, because we're going to be the ones that want to shout about it. So yeah, it's in the discussion for sure. And we were very close to announcing that last year for the World Masters, but again, because of the COVID situation, the Netherlands were unable to host the event. So that's the thing with television. Those conversations have to restart. You don't just, it's not like a postponing on the calendar and giving it another date. You have to kind of start from the beginning again. So yeah, of course. And there's, we've got the new event in Australia that's lined up. That's going to have decent coverage. And again, we're just waiting to see exactly what platforms that's going to be on as well.
Fingers crossed for that. You mentioned big events in the Netherlands. There's none bigger really than the Dutch Open, which is coming back this June after a few years away. How much are you looking forward to that one?
I love the event, and it's amazing how much bigger it is than any other event. I don't think there's an event even half the scale of the Dutch Open. It has had to have a postponement this year again. We don't need to say why, but that's another event that's in an unusual place on the calendar. So this will be a bit of a transitional year for them, I think, because their traditional slot is February. This time it's in June. But I think their entry levels are already over 2,000. So, and that's, for them, that's still quite low. It's incredible, isn't it? So, yeah, I'm hoping it'll be a roaring success. I'm sure it will be.
We also mentioned that Australian Darts Open. That's an event that got announced fairly recently. We're going to see the world champions Neil Duff, Bo Greaves there in the field. It's got platinum ranking status. How important is it to get these events on around the world again to grow the game?
Yeah, a full calendar is what we set out to achieve. It's taken a long time to get it back. We're still not there yet. There are still many nations that traditionally have their ranking opens, France or Luxembourg, for example, that don't have events on the calendar yet this year. So I think 2023 will be the real telling point when you look at a full calendar without restriction. But yes, making sure there are events globally is certainly our objective. Asia, for example, are really still struggling with lockdowns and quarantines and things like that, due to the pandemic. So it's taking a while to get things reset and things back to where they should be.
Well, you kind of answered my next question there. I was going to mention Thibaut Tricol. We made that final and ask about the dart scene in France. We've not had that French Open since 2019. It's probably a bit late now for 2022, but is there any developments on that coming back next year?
We're in discussion with all of the members and the reasons they're not doing. A lot of Luxembourg's a better example actually in terms of the venue that they actually use for the Luxembourg Open is now a vaccination centre. So it's things like that have just hindered the preparation of these open events. So France in a similar position. So yeah, I mean the interest from France, by the way, media-wise and from Eurosport themselves, are absolutely delighted with the progress that Thibaut made. It was excellent for the tournament. And like you said, a Northern Irish champion. So that kind of thing is exactly, you can't script it, but that's exactly what you kind of hope for with the first WDF World Championship, that there was some global reach and some different nations benefiting.
Definitely. Well, you've got the first World Championship, that's in the books. I know it's still very early days, only been a few weeks, but any sort of idea yet on when next year's one's going to be? Are you going to go back to that normal January slot? Are you looking at Lakeside again?
I'm quite open-minded about it. The January slot was dictated primarily by both broadcaster and venue. So if you have those two parties happy with that, then of course the WDF are going to go with whatever they would like. What I think the April postponement proved is that it can work at any time of year. So I'm very open to alternatives. But ultimately, that decision will lie with the broadcaster and in turn the host. And we will just make it work whenever they wish to have it.
Well, the WDF tour continues. Last weekend we had events in Scotland, Iceland. Good to see both of those covered with Dart Connect, and I know it's not easy to get all these events covered on there, but is that something that WDF actively looking at, or at least working on how they can cover these events so fans can follow along?
Yeah, absolutely. Conversations just in the last few days about that. We want to make the incentives better for the nations to use Dart Connect. It's not obligatory, but it certainly would be recommended, and it actually makes the administration of the event so much easier all round. So that's the way it's headed for sure. Dart Connect has been a great support. I think it's a great initiative, and hopefully more and more of the events, certainly the bigger events, use it.
Let's hope so. And lastly, away from the darts, I'd say I was one of the lucky ones to see you and Auntie Dundas sing Summer Night Song karaoke in the Lakeside Hotel. I won't ask for a rendition now, but as I wasn't there for the rest of the week, who else impressed you on the karaoke and who didn't quite hit the high notes?
Well, the first name that comes into my mind, can I just explain the situation there, by the way? It was actually Anke Zellstra that brought a small karaoke system over to the hotel where majority of the players, or all of the crew and the officials were staying, purely just to give us a bit of ambience of an evening once we go back to the hotel. It was something that wasn't so much pre-planned, but it was a success. But unfortunately, one of our media team, who we both know well, Harry Deacon, kind of took it upon himself to rule the karaoke, whether that was popular or unpopular. I always think it's a bit like a darts exhibition. When you go to a darts exhibition, you enjoy watching someone play well, don't you? But it's really good fun when someone plays bad. You can have a joke about it. So let's just say that was one of the highlights of the karaoke when Harry got on there, and we'll leave it there.
Well, Richard, it's a pleasure to catch up. Appreciate the time, and congratulations on getting that first World Championship on, and we wish you all the best for the rest of the year.
Yeah, my thanks to you, Alex, and my apologies again to Henry. Thank you.
Thanks again to Richard for joining us. Now we're going to be talking about the Women's Series in a moment, but let's get to our picks for the Premier League. It is night 12 of the season over in Dublin. The first game of the night, James Wade against Michael Van Gerwen. How do you see the first game going?
Yeah, battle of former world number fours. Wade's he's been on a good streak. Whether he's playing well or playing mediocre, he wins. And that's what Wade's always done. Wade has always found a way to win matches. Michael Van Gerwen has been playing well, but he hasn't always been getting results. You can look at the final against Johnny Clayton when he broke to go 5-4 up, but still managed to lose the match despite playing at a very high standard. Also lost playing very well to Clayton the week before. So it makes it a bit tricky in that regard, because you could see Van Gerwen playing phenomenally and losing, and Wade playing poorly and winning. And I think that might happen, just like it did when they met in the first round in the first half of the year's playoffs in Birmingham. So I'm going to go Wade to get over the line, despite I think Van Gerwen will play very well. I don't think Wade will play poorly. I think Wade will be Wade. I think Wade will take off a couple legs because he'll get an early break and not need to put an effort on all of Van Gerwen throws. If Van Gerwen kicks off with a 140, Wade can take off the leg. And suddenly Wade's averaging only 90 despite throwing in 6 13 to 15 darters and winning the match 6-3. And that's what I think is going to happen. I'm going Wade 6-3 and just being Wade.
Well, I'm going to go the opposite way. I'm going to go 6-3 to Michael Van Gerwen, and we've called him the new handicapper's nightmare, taking that nickname from Dale Gurney the last few years. But fair play to him. The last couple of weeks, Michael has been fairly consistent in this Premier League as far as the averages go. It's been high 90s going into the tons. As we say, James Wade, his average has been a bit up and down, a 105 average to win that final a couple of weeks ago, and kicks off last week with an 89 average. Still gets the win, though, as you say, and that's a sign of someone that's able to win playing at any standard. As we know with James Wade, he can produce the wins when he's not playing at his best, and that's 4 weeks running now when James Wade has come away from a Premier League night picking up points. And when you're battling to get in the playoffs, every point could be the difference. And yeah, he's picking up points regularly. Michael is on a decent bit of form at the moment. He's 3-1 up in the head-to-head with James Wade. James, of course, has got that win over Michael in the Premier League, but Michael's had his number the last few times. And as we saw last week, Michael lost his top spot despite making the final. I think he gets that top spot back. I think he wins this first game to replace Johnny Clayton at the top of the Premier League. So I'm going to go 6-3 to MVG.
Second match, battle of people outside the top four. Joe Cullen, who's still there or thereabouts, just 5 points adrift, going against Gerwyn Price, who is now a full 9 points out of the playoffs. How do you see this one?
Yeah, we spoke last week about Going Price's chance of getting in the playoffs, and we said it was going to be tricky, and it's probably more tricky now, isn't it? As you say, 9 points off with 5 weeks to go, and he's someone that has only made one final all season, and you look at his next 3 quarterfinal games on paper, they'd be the ones that he'd want. He's playing the other 3 players that at this moment in time are outside the top 4 as well. He's got Joe Cullen this week, then he's got Michael Smith, then he's got Gary Anderson. So they're the games that he would have wanted to play to start a night. But to get in the playoffs, he's going to have to do more than pick up 2 points a night. He's going to have to be 3-5 points. He's going to have to start making more finals. Joe Cullen, on the other hand, lost a tight game last week with Peter Wright 6-5, and he's 5 points off the playoffs, still well in contention. He is 3-0 up on Going Price in the head-to-head in the Premier League, including that walkover as well, if you want to include that. And I think he makes it 4-0. I'm going to go with Joe Cullen. I'm going to go 6-4 to Joe Cullen against Going Price.
Yeah, to make the playoffs, if you based on the current rate, he's averaging exactly 1 point a night, Going Price. The people he's chasing are still averaging 1.8. That puts them on pace for 29 points. That means just to match that 29 points, Going Price is going to have to average 3.6 points per night over the last 5 nights. That means he has to average better than a final going forward. 3 titles and a final from those 5 nights, something like that. Could he do it? Yeah, he absolutely could. He can reel off 4 consecutive titles. He is the former world number 1. He is the player who, when he's playing at his best, is nearly unbeatable. But I'm not tipping him to do that. Even if he were playing near his best, I wouldn't tip him to do that. Joe Cullen is a little bit more manageable, but still a lot of work to do. But I think that after tonight, it really is going to be a battle for seeding. I think Joe Cullen is going to go down to Going Price, and I think that, for all intents and purposes, is going to, bar someone collapsing or bar someone really getting hot, end the race for the playoffs. So I'm going Going Price 6-4 to theoretically keep his season alive, but really just clinch a spot in the 4 for the 4 who are currently there.
Third game of the night, and it is the battle of the bottom 2, Michael Smith against Gary Anderson. How do you see this one going?
Joe Cullen, Going Price isn't yet a dead rubber, but Michael Smith, Gary Anderson is, because by that same logic I just said, Gary Anderson would need 22 points, at least 22 points over the remaining 5 nights to lift the trophy, to get to the playoffs rather, and Michael Smith would need 21. And just so you know what 22 points over 5 nights is, that's an average of 4.4 points per night. That would be 4 titles and 1 quarterfinal. One semifinal. If Gary Anderson wins 4 titles and loses first match the other time, that probably would not be enough. Michael Smith, pretty much the same thing, although he could get away with 3 titles and 2 runner-ups to get those 21 points. So this is just for pride. This is just for prize money. Prize money maybe a little bit more than pride because, well, there's £5,000 between 8th and 7th and another 5,000 if you can get up to 6th, which is not that unrealistic. And even getting up to 5th is not that much. So there's still as much as £15,000 to play for, plus the weekly bonus. And I think Michael Smith is finally going to end that losing streak. I'm going to go Michael Smith to win at 6-4 and end his 5-match losing streak.
Yeah, I've got the same scoreline on my bit of paper as well. And the two bottom players at the moment, the 2 that met in the final week 6, I think it was in Nottingham back in mid-March. Since then, played 9, lost 9 between them. Gary Anderson, of course, 1 week he pulled out due to COVID. So if you include that game, played 10, lost 10. Neither of these players have won a game since making that final all those weeks ago. So they're not in the best of form, either of them. And as you say, I think this game is for pride. And I think for the next few weeks, really, it's can they build something going into the rest of the season, because there's going to be a lot to play for with the Euro Tours, of course, the World Match Play, the World Cup. We don't know if Gary Anderson will be involved in the World Cup. You'd imagine that Michael Smith will be representing Team England, trying to bring it home in a few months' time. So it's just about getting a bit of confidence going. And Michael Smith, the only one that's not won one of these Premier League nights. So he's still got to tick that off his list before the end of the season. And he's going to make the first step to maybe doing that this week. I've got the same scoreline as you. I'm going to go 6-4 to Michael Smith.
And lastly, we have 2 near the top. Johnny Clayton against Peter Wright. It's first against third. How do you see this one?
Yeah, a bit like Johnny Clayton against Michael Van Gerwen. These two, Johnny Clayton and Peter Wright, usually serve up some good darts between them. 3-1 to Johnny Clayton on the head-to-head in the Premier League this year. Of course, they met back on night one in the final. Peter Wright with that 113 average to win the night. Since then, Johnny Clayton, he's had Peter Wright's number, 6-5, 6-4, 6-5 last week. And it's, as I said at the start, my first prediction, Michael's going to beat James, which would put him back to the top. So Johnny needs a win here to get that top spot back. Peter Wright, it was good to see him go back to those gold darts last week, and just watching him play with them. Okay, he didn't go all the way and win the title. We lost in the semi-finals, but he did look a lot more settled, and when those darts are going in, it just looks effortless. So hopefully he's stuck with those darts. If not, it's highly likely that he's going to go to another set of darts, but if he sticks with them for the run-in, I think he is going to be dangerous, and I think he is going to be a contender for this Premier League title. He's not made a final for a little while. Maybe this could be the week that he makes another final, pushes himself up, maybe makes a late push for that top spot or even second spot. So I'm going to go Peter Wright to take this one, 6-4.
Ooh, yeah, I mean, it's time to make Peter Wright the handicap for his nightmares. Just keep rotating it around whoever the flavor of the week is. And Wright, since becoming world number one, as I said earlier in the show, has not consistently produced his best darts, but he did string together a couple of good matches last week. And I agree with you. I think he's going to get that revenge on Clayton. And suddenly, if all things go to as I predicted they will, we've seen some tightening and moving it towards being a four-way race for the number one spot. You said 6-4. I'll go 6-5. I think Clayton is going to continue to play well like he always does. So I think Peter Wright's going to get that win and just stay within touching distance of the two ahead of him.
And a reminder about our last man standing competition. We lost a lot of you last week. We're down to 18 of you left in the competition. Dartscast.com. Check out if you're still in the running for our prize. If you are, you can see which players that you've already picked. Remember, you've got to pick someone different. So one of the 6 players that you've not picked, get in touch with us, tweet us at Weekly Dartscast. Let us know your pick, get it in on time. Good luck to everyone who's still involved in that. And before we get to our next guest, let's switch gears to the Women's Series. Returns this weekend, second weekend of the season. Will it be another dominant weekend for Lisa Ashton and Fallon Sherrock, or are we going to see someone else pick up a title?
Surely the answer can be yes to both parts, because the last Women's Series of last year, it was another dominant weekend for both Lisa Ashton and Fallon Sherrock, but we did get to see that very last title go to the then world champion. So it could be yes to both parts, but a lot of it also depends on who ends up entering. We still don't know. PDC have generally announced the entries just a day or so beforehand, and we're now recording 3 days out. So we don't yet know who's going. We've heard that Mikuru Suzuki's going. Bo Greaves, when we had her on, said that she was 50-50. We don't know about some other of the top ladies players like Dita Hedman, who just won a big title this past weekend over in WDF competition. So there's a lot of players who could, and if they're there, have every chance, if they play at or near their best, to steal one of the titles. But we expect that Lisa Ashton will be there. We expect that Fallon Sherrock will be there. And they are a cut above everyone else in terms of consistency and in terms of their A game. And that alone makes them a favorite to win every single match and therefore every single title. I think for the most part, they will continue. Even if Bo Greaves shows up, even if Mikuru Suzuki shows up, even if they're match fit and match sharp, I still think Lisa Ashton and Fallon Sherrock combined should win the majority of the titles. But if Bo Greaves is there, you expect her to as well be in with a shout day in, day out. Same for Mikuru Suzuki, especially now that she's getting back towards her best by playing more darts. We saw what happened when she played the Women's Series last year, when she hadn't played as much. But as the weekend went on, her game started to improve, and suddenly she only won the last event. I think if those players are there, it will be a little bit more spread out. And maybe we'll see someone like Kirsty Hutchinson. Maybe we'll see Rhian O'Sullivan, who both made very good accounts of themselves at the Lakeside. See if they can steal a title or put a good march together in a few of the events. But I think, yes, I'm going to say it will be a weekend dominated by Lisa and Fallon, but it also will be a weekend where someone else picks up at least one title, maybe even two.
Just looking at the Roll of Honour from the Women's Series, dating back to when it first started, we've now had 20 events, 10 won by Lisa Ashton, 8 won by Fallon Sherrock, and the other 2 shared between Dita Hedman and Mikuru Suzuki. And as you say, we don't know the entries for the Women's Series when we're recording this. We do know the entries for Denmark this weekend, the WDF events. Dieter Hedman, her name's on the list of that. You've got a few others on there. Jo Clements, who made the final of the Scottish Open at the weekend, Suzanne Smith, Anke Zilstra. So there's some names in there that we know that we won't be seeing in the Women's Series this weekend. As far as the other one, Mikuru Suzuki, we believe that she is going to be in Wigan this weekend. She missed the first weekend of the season, and I think she goes there with a point to prove. This is going to be the first event that she's played in, one of the first events that she's played in when she's not coming in as the reigning Women's World Champion, and that's a title that she's had for over 3 years since she won that first World Championship back at the start of 2019. She won 2 world titles. Of course, there wasn't one last year. She just lost out at Lakeside a few weeks ago and didn't go according to plan for her. So I think she'll want to come to this Women's Series and put in a performance just to say, I'm still here, I'm still in the mix, I'm still one of the best ladies players on the planet. And to do that, what better way than to pick up one of these titles, end that dominance that we've seen so far this year from Lisa Ashton and Fallon Sherrock. And speaking of the best ladies players, of course, we have to mention Bo Greaves because she has just become the youngest Women's World Champion. And but we don't know if she's going to be involved this weekend. If she is, then you would definitely put her name in the mix as someone that could win one of these titles. And I'll give a mention to a few other names. You mentioned them. Rhiannon O'Sullivan, she played really well at Lakeside, getting to the semi-finals. Kirsty Hutchinson getting to the final, and the last game that she played in the Women's Series, that 91 average against Lisa Ashton in the semi-finals. So they're 2 players that you'd put as a dark horse. And I'll mention one other name. I don't think she'll win a title this weekend, but looking at the stats, and we do get to look at the numbers on Dart Connect from this Women's Series, and I was looking at the first 9 average from the first weekend, and as you'd probably guess, the top 2 on that list, both 88 averages for the first 9, Fallon Sherrock, Lisa Ashton. Third place, Katie Sheldon, same age as Bo Greaves. They're both 18 years old, and Katie Sheldon, she had 2 last 16s, 2 last 32s the first weekend. A few weeks ago, she just defended her All-Ireland ladies singles title, which she won in 2020. A player that seems to be progressing really well. And as I say, I don't think she'll win a title, but I think she could be someone that could make her name this weekend. She could maybe get to a last 16 again or a quarter-final. She's someone to keep an eye on, I think.
And now we move on to our next guest on this week's show. Here's our chat with the recent Women's World Championship finalist, Kirsty Hutchinson. I'm pleased to say I'm joined by the recent WDF Women's World Championship finalist, Kirsty Hutchinson. Thanks for the time, Kirsty. How are you doing?
Yeah, really good, thank you.
Good to hear. And firstly, it's been a few weeks now since you run to the final at Lakeside. How do you look back on that run now, making it to your first World Championship final?
Yeah, that was something I never imagined doing. I set about the tournament just to kind of win game 1. And then as the week went on, I got better, the standard got better. Saturday was just unreal to go 2 sets up. I know it went all the way to the deciding leg, but to hit that double and then the commentator say you're into the world final, it was just an experience I didn't think I'd ever have.
We'll obviously come back onto that week at Lakeside, but when we last spoke on this show, you just won the Welsh Open to secure your spot, but 2 weeks before the start date, the WDF World Championship was postponed. What was your reaction when you saw the news?
To be fair, when I got the call to say that it'd been postponed, I wasn't too fussed really because I wasn't putting any effort in on the board. I was just kind of saying, "Oh, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow," and tomorrow never came. And Natalie Gilbert kind of pushed me into practicing every night. We did best of 5 sets from Christmas up until April. So I went into that competition with good form. It just kind of took some time to bring it out of me. So I was ready in April, so it was all good being cancelled.
Well, before the Lakeside, over on the PDC side of things, we saw the extended Women's Series return with the first 4 events, 20 events this season. Firstly, how much better was it to play 2 events a day rather than the 3 a day that you had last year?
Oh, the 3 a day was just an absolute killer. By event 3, you were just dead on your feet, fatigued, tired. I don't think there was as much interest in event 3 as there was the other 2 on the day. But it's totally better the format. The event, having 2 events on the one day, you're up for it. You're motivated. You're less tired. You can prepare better. It worked really, really well.
And we have to mention that semi-final with Lisa Ashton, yourself averaging 91, losing out in a close game. I was watching along on the stream. It was a great game to watch. Despite being on the losing end, you must have taken so much away from a performance like that against Lisa.
To be fair, I know I can throw good darts, but I never expected or knew that I had it in me to hit 90 plus averages. So Lisa brought that game out with me. You have to play well against Lisa. You have to bring your A game. So yeah, to average 90, I didn't mind so much losing, but I'm still thinking to myself, what do you actually have to do to win a game against her? And I just wish I kind of brought that game to the final in Bow at Lakeside, but she didn't even give me a chance to get into the game. So yeah, it's all positives, and it's all I can take from these games.
Well, it was back to the WDF tour after that, and the Lakeside rolled around at the start of April. You said before it was a dream to play in a World Championship, which you achieved in 2020. But what was it like arriving at Lakeside to play in a World Championship there for the first time?
It was a total different feeling. I was over the moon to have made the Worlds at the O2, but when I turned up at the Lakeside, I spent a couple of days before my actual game, and it was just overwhelming. I was nervous, excited at the same time, and by the Tuesday I was ready to get up there and soak in all the atmosphere, and just took it as it come. And yeah, I played some good darts. I played some really poor darts, but that's the game, and I enjoyed it, and I hope I'm there again next year.
Definitely. And as a seed, you got a bye through to the second round where you met Joe Clements, and I was looking at your two best legs of that match, the 17-16 darters. They were the legs which clinched the two sets for victory. How did you reflect on that first game?
To be fair, I found that the first game, it was just steady. I had to overcome all the nerves and the emotions of going up there anyway. So yeah, first game was just a steady one, but it set me up for the rest of the tournament, and I knew what else I had to kind of produce in the further stages of the game. So yeah, all positives.
And we spoke before about the close game that you had on your debut against Eileen de Graaf at the O2. You then come through two deciding sets in the next two matches. Priscilla Steenbergen in the quarterfinals, you're a set down to win that one, and we saw the celebrations as well on stage. Did that show just how much this means to you?
Yeah, to be fair, the game against Aileen, I wasn't nervous in that game at all, and I think I enjoyed that game probably the most of the whole World Championships, whether it was at the O2 or Lakeside. I played really, really well there. Against Priscilla again, I didn't produce, but never in that game did I think I was going to lose either. I was just comfortable, and I just couldn't G myself up to get into that next gear, but all came together in the end, and I got the job done there too. So yeah, it's a work in progress, and it all comes down to how much practice you put in the board during the week. So yeah.
You mentioned that semi-final with Rhiannon O'Sullivan, two sets up. Rhiannon battles back to 2-2. It goes all the way to a final leg. How did you hold it together in that crucial moment at the end?
I actually have no idea. When I was just cruising, two sets up, and it came back to 2-2. I turned around and I looked at my dad in the crowd, and I just kind of muttered to him, what is happening here? And he kind of gave me the words, and he was like, calm down, breaths, all the support. And I just took that step back, and when I went for that winning double, I just said to myself, please go in. And it did. And that was probably my favourite game of the whole competition.
There are not many players that can say they've played in a World Championship final, even fewer who have only played in two World Championships. So what was it like waking up on that Sunday knowing that you would be playing in the final of what is the biggest ladies' competition?
To be fair, I had absolutely no expectations when I woke up on the day of the final. I knew what I was up against, and I watched Bo's semi-final against Lorraine on the Saturday night, and I just knew she wasn't going to crumble. She's not like that. She's very confident as Bo, on stage, on floor. If her darts go, she's bringing her A game. She's bringing 90 plus averages, and it's scary to watch. But all I could do that day was stand behind her and smile and laugh, and because I knew what was happening. So to get to that final was probably the best that I'm ever going to do. But yeah, as I say, I knew what I was up against, and I knew I was in for a total beating that day. So I just enjoyed the moment of being there. And
I think you described Bo as KFC gravy on Twitter after the final. We know you two get on well. At 18, she's become a world champion. What can you say about the talent that she has?
KFC gravy is possibly the best gravy going. And I really rate Bo. We all knew since the age of she was 11 hitting 9 darters that this girl was going to be a world champion. But to disappoint us all, it's just come sooner than we actually hoped. And the girl's going to be around for a long time, and this is who we're going to have to beat, and we're going to have to produce averages in the 90s to nearly 100 to beat her, and it's going to take somebody special to overtake what I think is about to come at Bo Greaves.
Well, we had Bo on our show a few days after Lakeside, and we were speculating with her when we would see all of the top ladies players in the same venue in the same event. Can you see that happening at some point this year?
Well, I was hoping this weekend coming actually in the PDC at Wigan, but after speaking to Bo, she was in two minds whether she was doing PDC or she was going to Denmark for the gold event. I tried to persuade her to come to the PDC women's, as you know, she's already automatically qualified for Lakeside. She's probably not going to even be competed with on points. She's sat second in the order of merit in the WDF, and I can't see anybody catching her. So I've tried to encourage her to come to the PDC, but I'm unsure of what Bo's decided on then this weekend. But if not Bo, then Fallon, Lisa. I've seen Makuru's entered for Wigan, so yeah, I think this weekend's going to be a big one.
Good stuff. Well, we saw you back in action in the Scotland Open at the weekend, semi-final of the singles. You won the pairs with Natalie Gilbert. Were you happy with how the weekend went overall?
To be fair, I never felt comfortable all weekend. And since Lakeside, to be fair, I haven't really put the practice in. I came back from Lakeside. It was straight back into my full-time job. I was making excuses, too tired. And that showed this weekend in Scotland. I kind of just scraped my way through the knockout stages and played some really good darts against Lorraine Hyde in the quarterfinals. But when it came down to the stage event, after we qualified for the pairs final at 2:00 in the afternoon, we were having to wait till 6:00 to play again, and I didn't prepare properly. So when I got on that stage, I wasn't comfortable, couldn't find where to stand, couldn't reach the board. So yeah, preparation totally wrong, and all I can do is come home and build on that, ready for this weekend.
Well, I've said in the past the WDF they should put on a World Pairs Championship for the men's and ladies, either at Lakeside or during the World Masters. Would you be up for that?
Yeah, totally. My pairs partners seem to pick me well. I don't ever enter pairs. I don't ask anybody if they'd like to play pairs on WDF events. I kind of just take that opportunity to rest and just try and get sorted for the singles. But the last couple of events, I had Vicky Pruham ask me to play. We won the Irish event, and then Natalie Gilbert asked me to play in Scotland, and we went on and won Scotland. So yeah, I'll wait and see who else would like to approach me, and we'll see how we get on then.
Before the pandemic, we saw you travelling to Germany, the Netherlands, Romania, Slovakia on what was then the BDO circuit. Have you got any plans to start travelling further afield now that things are opening up? Oh
yeah, definitely. The next one abroad will probably be June, I think, Dutch Open. But yeah, as I say, I've planned to go at them all. PDC, Germany. I'll do all the European events. So yeah, it's just having that love for the game. But as I say, I need to get back on the practice board, stop the excuses, and try and get back to the level I was playing before I went to Lakeside. Busy
time. Well, you mentioned the Dutch Open. You played it in 2020. You made the quarterfinals of the singles. For those of us who haven't been before, we've always wanted to experience it. What was it like to play in an event like that?
Oh, it's just mental. It's probably the biggest competition on the whole WDF. I've seen nothing like it. Crowds, players. I mean, there's over 300 to 400 women enter that event. It's scary. Long days, but very well run. I like how they have the kind of VIP room for seeded players, just to keep you out of the way of the thousands of people that are in watching. So yeah, it's a long slog. It's the Dutch Open, but it's definitely one of the best on the tour.
Well, back to the PDC. The Women's Series is back this weekend. After this weekend, there's 4 more events before the cut-off for the Women's World Match Play. That's a one-day televised event on Sky at the Winter Gardens. I know you're excited when that got announced, and at the moment you're not far off those qualifying spots. Is that what you're focusing on for this weekend, getting to that top 8?
Yeah, 100%. I think I'm currently sat 10th in the order of merit there. I mean, the PDC are just the gifts that keep on giving. We can't ask any more from them. They're putting these televised events on. They're trying to mix us in, with the men, putting us on their televised competitions. So yeah, I think every woman would be silly not to take up on the opportunity that the PDC are given. The more entries that we get, the longer the tournaments will run for, and the more the PDC will put the women's events on TV. So yeah, I'm definitely motivated for this weekend and try and get into that top 8 and qualify.
I think you said darts just got exciting when that announcement for Blackpool was made. It's another opportunity for the ladies which has been brought in. How do you assess the women's game right now? Is it heading in the right direction? What more can be done to keep that going? Oh, it's 100%
heading in the right direction. I don't see anything else that can be done, to be fair. They're starting. You have to start somewhere, and that's at the bottom. These ladies players are getting better. Averages are getting higher. People are putting the effort in to travel and make numbers up in these events. So yeah, I just think it's not about the organisations. It's now about players entering and making the effort to turn up to these events. Otherwise, we're not going to have them.
And away from the ladies' game, I saw you also visited the Durham Youth Darts Academy recently as well. Was that just a one-off visit? Do you plan on doing more there? What was it like seeing the youngsters in action?
No, very, very close with the Durham Youth manager, Jason Boney. Helped me a lot growing up. Started his Youth Darts Academy when I was 18, I think I was, 17 or 18. Went unbeaten until I couldn't play anymore under 21s, and I've supported them ever since. I've got younger family members now that I'm taking along to Durham Youth Academy Darts. So yeah, I like to see it doing well, and I like to see these young kids coming through. I mean, there's a massive love for darts in the North East, and it's bringing out some very, very good players.
And lastly, back to you, up to number 3 in the WDF Women's Rankings as well. You've just made that World Final. Things are looking good so far for you in 2022. What are the main goals for the rest of this year?
Main goals is focus and trying to make all of the PDC women's events, as well as try and keep in that seeded position, which makes it a lot easier to qualify and be in round 2 at Lakeside rather than going through them first round games or qualifiers. So yeah, I'm going to try and stay in that top seeded positions and make the most of PDC Women's Series.
Fingers crossed that. It's going to be a busy rest of the year. Congratulations again on the final at Lakeside, Kirsty. Appreciate your time and wish you all the best for the rest of the year.
Thank you very much.
Thanks again to Kirsty for joining us.
Now let's finish up the show with some listener questions. Thanks to everyone for getting involved again. And the first question comes from George Dobson, who says, is the Alloa Masters a major?
No.
That settles that one. Yeah, if you guys have seen the picture on Twitter, a nice trophy for Michael to win there at the exhibition up in Scotland, but I think like you, we're not going to call that one a major.
I love the questions that George Dobson sends in, though. They're all over the board, but sometimes a one-word answer is all that's needed for some of those questions. Our next question comes from FDI. Has the quality of non-tour card holders increased since the start of the pandemic?
Oh, that's a tricky one. Before I get into it, happy birthday for the other day to FDI Lendl. He had his birthday at the weekend and put a tweet up, actually. I think it was on Sunday, his FDI rankings, non-tour card holders with a 1,700 plus ranking. I think there was 15, 16 players on there. You had Raymond Smith, Scott Williams, Karol Sedlacek, Sebastian Białecki, all players that we've seen in the last few months do some good things on the dartboard. And, without crunching the numbers, it is hard to say a definite yes or no, but I guess we just talked about the exhibitions, the Alloa Masters exhibitions are coming back, and we are now seeing a lot more darts come back, whether it's the WDF World Championship, local darts leagues. We've just had the first Magic weekend, the county UKDA weekend. The online league continues to go. This weekend we've got the ADC, the first weekend of the championship tour. So I guess really that the more darts we're seeing now, the better the standard's going to be, the more opportunities these players are going to get. So I think you can say we are heading back to that pre-pandemic level as far as players underneath the 128. And as we've spoken about in the past, the top players at the top of the PDC, we are seeing more strength in depth. I'd say we're probably seeing that strength in depth now return with players that don't have that tour card.
Yeah, I think it's the depth that's the key point. We've always seen some really good players who didn't have tour cards. Back when I was on Twitter, one of my favorite tweets I ever had was from the year that Nathan Aspinall didn't have a tour card, when I said the quality of darts or the depth in darts can be summed up by the fact that Nathan Aspinall doesn't have a tour card. We saw how quickly, once he got back on tour, he moved up the rankings, making consecutive World Championship semifinals and winning a UK Open. But the depth hadn't always been there. And if you just compare the Challenge Tour in 2019 compared to the Challenge Tour this year, in 2019, 3 people over the course of the year finished above a 90 average. Jesus Nogueira, Ciaran Tien, and Matthew Dennett. So far this year, granted it's still early days, there are 8, including Matthew Dennett again. But it goes deeper than just that. In 2019, 47 players averaged 85 or above. And 47 currently has a tour card in Barry Van Peer. This year it's 69. There's 22 more players who are averaging 85 or above over the course of the Challenge Tour season than did just 3 years ago. And that's a sign that there is more depth. And that's a sign that you have to play at a higher standard overall if you're going to be competitive on the Challenge Tour match in, match out. Because if the level is lower, you don't have to play as well to win. So there's obviously more players who are capable and more players who are performing day in, day out, but there's also that need to do so. So yeah, I'm going to say it is deeper, although there is one noticeable name that no longer appears that was there in 2019. And that's not because this person has a tour card. It's because he didn't go to Q School this year. And that's Mark Walsh, who was in that category of 85 plus players. I'm sure he'd be in a category of his own of 100 plus players if he was still playing. Loss, he's not. So overall, the depth is there, but one key player is missing. And just in case you're wondering, there must be so many more players playing. No, it's 28 more players overall playing now as compared to 3 years ago. So it's not a significant amount overall, but overall they are playing better.
One goat missing. Hopefully we'll see him come back soon. Well, the last question we've got from our listeners comes from Jojo, who says predictions for 2022 major winners.
All right, we'll go World Match Play to, I'm going to go Michael Van Gerwen to finally win a 3rd World Match Play and finally say that he's finally back. I guess I skipped Premier League. I'll go Johnny Clayton to defend the trophy. World Grand Prix, I think it's going to be a surprise. I think it's going to be someone a little lower down the rankings. Ooh, that's a tough one. How about that be the one that Luke Humphries breaks through and wins? European Championship, I'm going to go Gerwyn Price, Grand Slam. I'm going to go Peter Wright to finally win it, beating Gerwyn Price, of all people. Players' Championship, I think Michael Van Gerwen, who last year's final streak came to an end, I think he'll win it. And then World Championship, Mark Walsh, who's going to finally get his Czech citizenship or something, go through the qualifiers, and win the World Championship without dropping even a leg.
Wow, I did not expect that. I was going to go Peter Wright to win the World Championship, Joe Cullen to win the Masters, Danny Noppert to win the UK Open, but all those events have already happened, so I can't go with those. And also the Torremolinos Open, which was last month, whoever won that, congratulations to them on becoming a major champion. Yeah, I wasn't going to go down the route of picking all the different majors. I'll pick out a few players, though, and I think we'll see Dimitri van der Berg win his 2nd major this year. I think we might see Nathan Aspinall pick up another major. I know we spoke to him a few months ago now, and it didn't sound very good for him, did it, with the injury that he's had, but it seems to be heading in the right direction for him now. That the good news has come, and he's playing some good darts again, and if he can stay injury free or resolve those issues, I think he's going to be well in the mix come the second half of the year. So I'll pick out those 2 names. And we did speak last week, didn't we, about players that could win their first major title. And Price, you didn't mention Michael Smith too many times there, because you said the Alloa Masters isn't a major title, so he still needs to pick up 2 major titles this year. But I'll go, I like you. I think we do see Luke Humphries pick up that first major this year.
I did forget to mention him, but I also didn't say the World Series finals. I'm sure there's something else I didn't mention. I also didn't say Damon Hedda, who I thought had a very good chance to pick up his first major. But anything else for this week?
As always, we have to say big thank you to our guests for joining us. Big thank you to everyone for listening. If you're still involved in the last man standing competition, don't forget to get your picks in. The show hopefully will be out before the Premier League this week, so this will be your reminder to get your pick in. As always, big thank you to our sponsor Dartwolf for their support. If you want more Dynamite Darts content, dartwolf.tv. Give Dartwolf a follow at Dartwolf180, and we'll have plenty to recap next week. The Premier League, the Euro Tour's back this weekend, the Women's Series as well. So we'll be looking back at all of that. And if there's anyone that you want to hear from, we've got a few guests hopefully lined up over the next few weeks. But if there is anyone in particular that you want to hear from on the show, then best place to do it at Weekly Dartscast on Twitter. Let us know, and we'll do our best to get them on for you.
Yes, indeed. I'll have a short sign off this week because I have to get ready for work. But thank you to everyone that Alex thanked, and also thank you to Alex. We're only 2 episodes away from episode 250. That's 3 quadruple 20s and double 5. So get your 4th dart. You're going to need it because, well, no other way to score 250. Hang tight and enjoy the darts until then.